Can't forget you. It was great to chat to people and make contact. So I do apologise if I haven't had a personal conversation with every single one of you. Perhaps we can remedy that before the end, before you depart. But can I just take you back? Because we've had a lot of words here. You remember yesterday I got quite emotional because I gave you an anecdote about my first class of 41 children, and about my way of language learning, which was to give the little tins of cards back in those days. That was the quickest way I could do it. And I just remembered, you know how you suddenly have a flashback of memory about something. And I remembered a girl called Kulvinda coming back after the second lot of tins where she'd got up to 50 words. And I remembered the joy on her face, but more importantly, the joy on her mother's face, because she came back with her mother. Because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was actually teaching her mother the words as well as a byproduct of sending those things home. So after all the words and all the machines and all the AI that we've talked about, let's just remember the students and the children and the human beings that we're having an impact on, because that's what all of this is about. It's a mechanism for delivering that learning to those people. Let's try and get grounded back to the people that it's important that AI is going to interact with, but it's the impact on those children. That's why we're all here. That's why Robotel's here. That's why educators are here. That's why we're here. And you could choose to be in another aspect of life, building, construction, or anything like that. But education is about human beings. It's about molding and preparing those people for their next point of their life. So again, a slightly different slide here. I just love these photos of the tutors and the children interacting with the technology. And my friend who's the photographer has this great knack of lighting up the faces. I don't know how he does it, but he usually gets a good image. So what I want to try and do in this next hour or so are two things. One is to get a bit of a recap of what we've done, because it's important. It's important that we reflect on all the information we've gathered, all the discussions we've had. And then secondly, what Robotel would like to do is get your opinions on conversations that should happen next after this, because we don't want this just to end here. We've built a network of colleagues, of friends, and we want to influence both what we all do next, but also what, in conversations with ministries or with new customers, what Robotel might do or what they might invent, because I want us to come up with some ideas for things that they might put into their next product as well. So let's just have a look at these. We were in the restaurant last night, and I was talking to Anna, and I said I had problems getting AI to generate some images for me. So she quickly got her phone out and did it much quicker than I could. So the first question was, can you generate an image of a language lab from 1960? And that's before I started teaching even. But I actually tell you what, I probably used something like that when I was learning at high school. And I'm sure that these still exist. But you remember I was talking to you about these tape machines. If you've never, if you're young enough not to have even know what a cassette is, I have to go back quite a long time. But reel-to-reel tapes, and there was quite an industry in that. But the concept was the same. You had to listen, you had to understand, then you had to speak. And those are the key concepts. So it hasn't changed a great deal, but the techniques and the mechanism for doing that are much more sophisticated. So that wasn't individual really. You sat at an individual desk, but you were relying on interacting with a machine. So nothing's changed, has it? AI is a machine, but it's a more sophisticated machine. I'll use a brand name because I seem to remember the word Tandberg on the tape recorder, and the tape recorders, I thought that was a person. So when I was using them. And then this was, what was it, 2024 or 25? 25. Okay, so now we're into the world of potentially what we've been discussing, but you've still got students interacting with the screen, albeit with 3D glasses, so they're getting a visual stimulus now. So we haven't really considered that, have we? That you're not just getting the information through the auditory senses, but through the vision. I think the previous speaker did allude to that, and I think that was what she was trying to portray, was that it's multimodal. In other words, that when you're designing and constructing what you want the learner to engage with, it's got to engage with all the different senses. Now that's quite a challenge. It's not an easy thing. This is why we need a partnership with a company, because they will understand, they will have experts in the visual design of the screens. We're not experts at that. Actually, my daughter is a graphic designer. She's great at those sort of things. If I give her a document to do, she'll design it and it'll be much clearer than if I did it. So there is an expertise involved. But 2 images there. I wonder whether a third image, what will the third image look like? If we came back in 5 years' time, what would that be? I don't see too many. In the UK, I see more movement in the hardware towards portable devices, not fixed assets in rooms. And I don't know what it's like in your country, but in the UK, the physical space within a school is precious. So to devote a room to something is starting to be a key worry. Already I'm seeing school libraries disappear, which is a big worry for me, where physical books are deemed not to be necessary. And that's a debate for the school leaders to have. I personally would never get rid of a library if I was still in charge of a school. But having a room where you've got fixed assets maybe is going to be a challenge for us all. Okay, let's just think about the conference keynote themes. Let's go back in time, a bit like Marty McFly, Back to the Future, and let's look. So the first discussion we had was around bridging language gaps. We'll come out to the main points in a moment. Then we looked at this. Then we had those lovely case studies that we were told about. And then we had a presentation on the voice of the students. And then this morning we had this multilingual perspective. So those are the 5 themes which Robotel carefully put together. I've missed out my contribution because that was really just a typical one of my ramblings about things, but I enjoyed doing it anyway. So here are the main points. So I think in the first presentation, the key messages for me coming through was the word pedagogy. It was about teaching, and I think that word was repeated a lot, and it was about identifying a need. I think this is really important in language teaching, is to understand why you feel the students need to learn that language. And we've had lots of different gateways into that need. So a gateway could be that you need to learn the language because you're new into a country. It could be that you need to learn that language because you already know one language and you want to acquire another language. There are a lot of different, or it could be, here's another aspect of language teaching that we haven't thought of, because a lot of the discussions have been around older students. What about language development from kindergarten through Do you understand that aspect of language development? We could use the same techniques to fast track those students in their own language. It's exactly the same technique, but we very rarely use it. We fall back on traditional methods for developing language development in what you might call your native language. But we could use some of the foreign language, what we call the foreign language or the additional language techniques for that. So those takeaways are important, but the compelling need needs to be established. And I'll give you another anecdote from my own personal experience. When I went to high school, I come from a very poor background, very a disadvantaged background. And I remember sitting through my French lessons, and the teacher said to me, why don't you pay more attention to this? And I remember the answer I gave to her. I'll never travel outside England. I'll never travel outside the UK, was my own perspective. So, in other words, look where I am now. How wrong could I be? But then, given my background, I didn't understand why I needed to do it. I was only doing it because on a piece of paper it said, you need to sit this French exam. So the need is there. And I think we understood from some of the later presentations that there's more of a compelling need. And certainly Kulvinder, the girl who had the tobacco tin in my class, she had possibly the most compelling need of all, because she was in a new country and she wanted to chat to her friends. So that was an easy need for that one. But for me, it was convincing me as a student, and the teacher never did ever convince me that I would ever need to use French, but of course I do. And of course now I'm trying to catch up using modern methods. So AI in language teaching. So this was about looking at different personality types and the way in which we might adapt. Do you remember? So we all thought about how best we learn, how best we think, how best we engage with activities. And sometimes, and this might be an issue with having a single approach through a lab or through books, that doesn't adapt to what the individual needs. So the modern systems need to be adaptive, and I think that was a great presentation to remind us the different ways in which we acquire knowledge and the way we learn new things. And then the case studies. Well, for me, this was about impact, particularly that one on the new arrivals, and the need to engage and to access a core curriculum. Wow, that's very important. I like the statistics involved in that. That a lot of us get measured on what our outputs are, and to have some data and statistics about that improvement was great from Danny. And then, of course, she echoed what I saw in Kuljit's mother, is that when it goes home, it's actually a stronger bond of learning. So if we haven't thought about bridging the gap between school and home and continuing the learning between school and home, we're probably missing out on maybe the 50% impact of what happens, because our learning takes place here, and in travel home, if it's reinforced at home, that learning is having double the impact. So any systems or any programs of learning shouldn't end when the lesson bell goes. It should go home. It should be all the while. And the technology now can do that. So I asked Peter at breakfast this morning whether, I mean, in a lot of schools these are banned, they're deactivated, but that doesn't mean to say the student doesn't have that. So is there a way of having the curriculum that's being used in school, the personal learning pathway, activated on the phone so the student can maybe redo that work or rehearse it in their own time on their phone if they choose to. So that'll be a choice for them. So that was just a brainwave I had over a croissant this morning. And then we had the voice of the students. So this, to me, the big thing from this presentation was the cultural relevance. So it's about reinforcing and not stereotyping particular cultures. That's a great challenge. I mean, when I again, things have changed now, hopefully, but when I learnt French, I mean, the sort of stereotypes that were used in the materials there probably wouldn't be acceptable now. And certainly I can imagine the stereotypes for anyone learning English. I mean, I'm sure you would expect me to have a bowler hat on and a suit and, wear a Union Jack all the while, which probably wouldn't be. And then the last one here, the key takeaway for me for this one was the words that kept coming through was the mediation by humans, by teachers, which is a bit reassuring, isn't it? Would you agree? Otherwise, we'll all be out of a job. We don't want that. No, it's even using that great piece of interactive software, it was mediated by the teacher. And when I've been involved in my work, helping companies design new products and helping schools understand them, what I've tried to do is always make sure that there's a way of the teacher mediating that work, and it's a transference of the time. If we use some of the AI to take away some of the time spent on generating course materials and on delivering those course materials, we don't just give the teacher some time off to go and have a coffee. What we probably ought to do is re-engineer that time, reallocate that time for them to do the mediation. So their role moves from being a mundane role, which is spending time issuing work out, distributing work, to actually sitting with a student or with a group of students and mediating it more. Does that make sense to you? The time in the lesson will be better spent doing the sophisticated stuff that only a human can do, and you give the mundane to the AI and to the machine learning. Let the mundane do the heavy lifting. You do the important stuff, the complicated stuff, which is the interaction. So those were my sort of main points from the presentations. So there's one or two papers been published on the use of AI in language learning, and these are just reminders of some of the things that are in place now. So we're all, and I'm sure a lot of these aren't even being used a lot, but they're in place now. And I'm not going to go through them again because this is a reminder to us. These are some of the key things. And these are the things that the machine learning does well. Automating, having the conversational practice, that's what I do on Duolingo. That's the bit that I do. Sometimes it irritates me, but there we are. Yeah, I do that. That works well. This, to me, the pronunciation, again, I'm reminded, I've got a flashback from the old way of doing it, where a student had to stand up in class and say a word back. And, you imagine, particularly on teenagers, their reluctance to do that, which is, and now it can be done with headset, microphone. It can be much less threatening for a student to practice and rehearse the pronunciation of the new language. And of course, the last one is the adaptive nature of it. In a classroom that doesn't use AI, it's more work for the teacher to generate that and adapt if the lesson isn't going well, isn't it? It takes more time for you to adapt that and it might be that you can't do it till the next lesson, whereas the AI will adapt fairly quickly. So look, these are key things, I think, for when you go back to wherever you're working, for you to maybe reflect on and see whether you're using these areas at all. And if you're not, have an experiment in those areas. So again, these are I like this slide, and you can have these. These were just key messages from one of the European documents that came out. This is the most important word for me, the active part. The speaking and the listening skills. And of course, the visual skill as well. So you can see the word. Do you remember? I keep going back to it. My tobacco tins for learning the words. Well, there was something else that the head teacher brought into my classroom and said, I don't know how to use this. You might as well have it. And it was a machine with a card this big with a strip of magnetic tape on, and it had a word on it, and you fed the card into the machine, and it went from left to right, and the audio tape read out the word as you were watching it move. I'm not sure what it was called. I could probably Google that and find out. But it was back in the late 70s when I used this. But actually, it had a massive impact because the kids they were fascinated by it moving. So that it was an early way of having a visual stimulus with an audio one, which is using two senses, which it would probably cement that word in the brain a bit better. So the audio and the visual probably engage with a bit of active learning. Okay, I promised you yesterday I did a small survey with my schools. It's not a great number of response, but they were key people in the UK that I trust, school leaders, people who are engaged in education, quite a few real teachers and head teachers as well. So I asked them some questions that I'm sure you asked yourself when you came here. So these are some of the intriguing answers. I used one of those scales where you had to rate from not very good to good or likely to unlikely. It's a Likert scale, so you'll get the gist of this. So first one then. Does your school currently use technology to deliver language learning? Probably not then. So we've been sitting for 2 days discussing whether to move from one piece of technology to AI driven. And most of the schools I was engaged with are not using hardly any technology. So whilst we're in the clouds here with our great view of this utopian environment where all of this technology is being used, the reality in the UK is that most of the language learning is being delivered through textbooks and without any technology. Now, that's not to say it's wrong. It's just giving you a perspective on that, and probably giving the Robotel sales force a gleeful look in their eyes to think there's an opportunity there. But that's the reality. I'm sorry to ramble and to go on to anecdotes, but I think sometimes it's nice to know about people, isn't it? During the pandemic, I worked for the UK government engaging with schools to try and get them online because they were all absolutely desperate to get an online platform, and some hadn't even bothered to think about it, although they should have done. So I worked with 200 schools to get them online. I realised how some schools had very little technology. Some were fantastic. They just needed reassurance. They've got great systems in place. Others had very little. And when I go to conferences or exhibitions, I need to remind myself that not all schools are the same, all universities are the same. They're different. There are different rates of their progress for this. So we're all here because we presumably all are good at this. So congratulations to everyone. But some of my friends and colleagues were telling me they're not even using any technology. Now, the good news is if you've never used anything in the past, you can jump to a new system. That's the good bit. So you can make more rapid progress. So that's the good news. Here's the next one. Adequate staffing. Again, in the negative side of this, we talked about this yesterday, didn't we? About having trained teachers. Now, some of these responses are from elementary or primary schools where there's no trained language teacher, there's no qualified language teacher. I'm not sure whether it's like it in your country, but in the UK, we have an increasing number of what are called classroom assistants who do not hold a teaching qualification. They take classes, but they're not qualified teachers. And they are sometimes, I hate to say this, but learning the language target in the curriculum in elementary schools is sometimes a chance for the teacher to go and do some planning while the classroom assistant delivers the lesson. So there's an opportunity here, as we discussed yesterday, for the systems to provide that authenticity and that accuracy and to help that person in their role. And I can see some nods in the room that you've probably got colleagues that would be helpful to. Cool. So this is the quality, and so these more or less match then, don't they? So you've got minus 41 there, minus 59 there. So even some of the ones that are qualified maybe are not qualified enough. So we need the support of systems like Robotel system to help that and give that reassurance. I mean, even I could probably deliver a lesson in French if I had the system to help me. Because as a teacher, I think I'm pretty good at understanding how to work with my class. I just haven't got the level of competence in that language, which the reassurance I'd get through the systems. Okay, I think I could teach more or less any subject, but I haven't got that subject expertise. So, which tools have you used for language learning? For what purpose? Ooh, there we are, a word cloud. Ooh. I mean, you can see the machine learning on Microsoft Forms hasn't quite worked out. Some of the comments weren't, don't fit in the word cloud, but the majority do. So obviously, ChatGPT gets number one spot, and I'm assuming that's for planning, as we discussed yesterday when you did that little question and answer thing. Thank you for doing that. That was about how you adapt your planning, and a lot of people, the first thing they do, the teacher will go and look at the planning. Right. So does AI make language more engaging? Well, I think probably strongly agree for that. AI helps personalize the language learning experience. AI improves students' confidence, reduces workload, should be integrated into language curriculum. So we got some good ones here. So that's positive. So even though they may be not using tech, they're looking forward to see what the possibilities are. Now, we don't know why they're not using technology, but what we do know from this set of responses is they want to, and they can see that they need to. So that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. Is this all right? Is this of interest to you? Yeah, I was quite fascinated by this, actually. So here, we discussed this yesterday. Yep. even though it was a small selection, it wasn't hundreds of people, because I had to do, Hannah helped me and Peter helped me to put an appeal out through LinkedIn, and I got a good response. But there we are. I'm not sure. The equity of access to me, I thought, would have been a bit higher. Bit higher. Okay, so these were, I had a little box at the end, like we always do on surveys, where it says, do you want to say anything else? and these were the comments. So I've put in bold some of the key things. So I think we were doing quite well in the discussion yesterday. Quite good. These things keep cropping up, don't they? About lack of expertise, working independently. So potentially the one issue with the pictures that we saw is if you're in a room and the teacher's in command and they're trying to take the students along at the same pace, because teachers like to be in control, don't we? We all like to be in control. So we've got to have some accommodation where we gather the students together. So we move them through the program, but then AI ought to be able to give that personalised approach, which is, I think, where the mobile phone app might come in, because it will probably say to David here, you need to do more revision on the French words for a department store, which was the section on Duolingo I was on, because I couldn't remember the word for trousers and culottes and all the rest of it that the owl was trying to teach me. I mean, again, this was an example. I didn't ask for an example, but it was given. I could ask ChatGPT for an entry-level 10-minute lesson to teach me French, or a lesson plan for 30 children to teach French. It will do that. And then we come back to, please mediate that, because it might not be any good. Okay, so I said, what future features would you like to see? Quite interesting. Ooh, I don't think we've discussed that. Data analysis. I'm going to share with you in a couple of slides. I asked Miss or Mrs. or Madame Copilot. Remember, I've got this vision, and Hannah thinks of it. It's a Mister, which is great because we all got different views. I asked to do a review of all the available software, pros and cons, rate them, what they do. Okay, so I'll give you that. It's interesting. This is important, I think. As in my role as governor, I'm always asking the school about data. What information have you got? What impact has it got? And Danny had got the data, hadn't she? She got data for us, which is good. Oh, there we are. I won't repeat that. A hybrid approach like that. This comes back to my mobile phone, or maybe an online platform that you can assign work for that the student can engage with at home. Hybrid. So it's not all about the teacher working. Does everybody understand the concept of flipped learning? This notion, yes. So there's lots of nods, thank you. Again, it doesn't have to be follow-up work after the lesson. It can be pre-work before. So you can do that in two ways. But it was interesting that it came up with that. I like that one. There we are. I've heard much about that during this conference, really. So partnering schools together. Used to be some good programs for that, Peter, hadn't there? Some good sort of twinning I believe there's a conference on at the moment, isn't there? An e-twinning one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, can I come back to the word need? So if if you've twinned with a school or a college in another country, then the need is there to learn that language and be a bit more fluent in it. Because when you're trying to explain a project to another student, a peer, then you need to be fluent in that language. So that's an authentic reason for learning the language. Okay. Oh, here we go then. I don't expect you to look at these individually, but TWE is on. It got a rating of 4.3? I asked it for these. I did this about 5 times. I kept asking it for more things. So key features, strength, what platform, what teacher tools, user rating, and then on the second page, sorry, it was on an Excel sheet. I had to do it on 2. Who the target user was, what the pros were, what the cons were. Okay, I don't think it listed paid software. I think it was free software. Okay, was that of use, of interest? So, a quick review of what it does. Okay, that's my gift to you. Let's have a little bit of a look now. I think, to me, these are some of the key questions we need to be asking. Oh, that's nothing serious.
That's the sense of urgency.
This is why we're here, I presume, because we want to think about this question. How will it impact? Will we be able to design things that are inclusive? I think these are key questions that we're yet to find the answer to, aren't they? And going back to one of the keynotes, is the pedagogy, when you look at some of the analysis, is the pedagogy behind the software, is it good enough? Is it diverse enough? It's, we've all used learning software that is just multiple choice and you can get a good score by just guessing. That's not good pedagogical practice, is it? It's just literally time wasting for a student in some respects. I mentioned this yesterday. I don't think that my recommendation to you is, if you're going to adopt a piece of software, try and find a company that you can have a dialogue with, or that you feel wants to listen to what you have got as a user. If they haven't got a user group or a way of you inputting to that company and having a partnership with them, probably it's because they're doing it to you rather than with you. And the best companies always work with, as we discussed yesterday, instead of giving a directive to you, and here it is, take it or leave it, it's a two-way dialogue. Because the best companies want to find out what's going on in classrooms, what the needs are, what teachers and students want, and the companies and this is an issue with the big global tech companies. It's not very personalised unless they have a good local education team in your country or not. And I've seen over the years in the UK, some of those big global tech giants, their education section has almost disappeared. And in the UK we still call teachers, and yet I can see the word educators coming in from North America in. I'm not being disparaging about that. I do lots of presentations in North America, but it's not language we use in the UK. So, it's not, I'm just giving that as a flippant example of the way in which, the big tech companies are who they are. They're global. It's a global solution, whereas the more responsible companies will form a partnership and help you develop. I've just, again, this was going through one of the European papers that's just been produced from that conference, Peter. I can't remember the name of it now. Digilingo, that's right. So these were, we talked about some of these yesterday, didn't we? Include design and testing. So we've got a lot of people here who have obviously, and online, who obviously are interested in this area. So wise companies would help get them to try new things out, maybe under non-disclosure agreement, maybe new stuff that's coming down the line, because the companies need to find out, because their investment in this, whether or not this is the right thing to do, whether it's going to work or not. And having some joint research initiatives. So I feel energized to go back and think about what it is I would like to do next, and how you might research it, and how you might integrate it into your working. Okay, Peter, I think we're coming towards the end of this now. So I hope that's been a good recap for you, and a bit thought provoking. I'm sorry it hasn't been quite as interactive as drawing on the. I can imagine having that app in one of the high school classes that I went into not so long ago. Some of the drawings would be quite interesting that came out with groups of teenagers, but it might be a bit of fun to do. Certainly would have to be mediated, that's for sure. Oh dear. Okay. So I guess we've answered that question. So when I first put this together on the way here, I thought, is there going to be a desire or a fear? So you probably encounter sometimes a fear of AI, and for two reasons. One, usually fear is equated to lack of understanding, or real, what you don't know. And I think we've established there is a desire to do this. So I think, so reflect on, did we discuss the compelling benefits? I don't think so. Did we uncover the most serious risk? And I would love to know one key development. So in a moment, we're going to get you to reflect a bit on this, and get you to think about what the key developments might be. And we'll come back to, we're going to, the last slides where we're going to get people to interact. But this one, would you also, in a moment, going to get you to do a bit of chatting again. So can you remember this one as well then? We want to carry the discussion on. And, I'm sure you've already exchanged contact details with key people that you've spoken to, which is what we normally do. But I'm sure Robotel would want to try and create some sort of group to communicate. So if you would be interested in that, and when you're having your discussion about it, when we get the mic round, please reflect on that as well, will you? So, and thank you for all your input, both, when it's a bit like having a class of children, isn't it? But some people will respond in class, put their hand up and chat in class or in the discussion, and then others will wait until the class has gone out, and then they'll come up and talk to you. And we've had both of those interactions, which has been great. Okay. So we're gonna pause here then, and Hannah, we're going to have a brief discussion here. It gives you some time to think about both these, what the main takeaways are from you, and also how you'd like to continue. So the previous slide. So if you have a chat in between yourselves about that, then we'll put the mic round, and Hannah will take down what we want. Is that okay, Peter? Can we do that? So let's do that now. Okay. So if you want to.
No, I'm not allowed. Oh yeah, okay, good. Yes. So what are you key takeaways? Or maybe you can start with one. Yeah. Yes. Okay. It's not necessarily.
What you want the next steps to be, which way you want to be communicated with. It's like we've had 4 groups, so what I'm going to do in a moment is go to each group rather than individually. So I'll just give you a minute or so to organise that feedback, and I'll ask for the feedback in a moment. 3, 2, 1, bong, ding, whichever way you want to put it. If I come again, I'm gonna have to have a. How are we going to do this? All right, here we go. Then I'm going to work this way. Then I'll go this way. I don't know why, but I will. Let's start over here. Would you like to give us a bit of feedback then, please?
Yes, we talked mainly about the possibilities of AI. So the possibilities of AI to help the teachers to do the heavy lifting and to help with evaluation, to take this weight off the shoulders of, oh, now I have to evaluate the students, but also always with the supervision of the teacher. So AI should never be left alone. That was the first point we talked about. Then we talked about how to use the smart class for, in particular, the smart class app in particular for smartphones, because we noticed that the students use smartphones a lot more than we are, and like tablets or computers are not so used. So we would like to have the smart class app on a phone, if possible. Then we talked about yes, the data protection. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And this was so what he talked about is that when we use AI, the data that we give them are stored on a server that's somewhere else. So, for example, if you use ChatGPT, the servers are maybe in the US. So, how can we protect our data? How can we dispose of our data for ourselves? So, we talked about this, and then we talked very briefly about the perspectives of the future, how to stay in contact, and what to expect, and when the next conference will be, and that was about it.
Do you have any thoughts on how you might want to best keep in touch?
Not so much yet. No.
Okay, thank you.
Not that we don't want to, but
absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, so that idea of having that on the phone then over a croissant was not too bad an idea. Then perhaps I'm my best. Perhaps I had to eat more croissant. Thank you very much. Shall we move on to the next group? Thank you. That was great input. Don't be shy.
Okay, we said a lot of very similar things. We talked about how AI should be supportive with assessment in the classroom and do heavy lifting, etc. Should be there to mediate, and we also talked about how tasks in the classroom should be more real world based.
Very
so
good point. Yes.
maybe moving away from essays, especially if teachers and nobody's even reading them. Why should students have to write them? Why do we need to learn how to ask for directions if we have Google Maps? So we need to consider real life tasks that are aided by AI and also potentially inspired by. So instead of worrying about cheating, actually guiding the students and the teachers to use AI, but in a hands-on way, but also with guardrails. So I spoke to Maria yesterday about a scale. I thought this was genius of putting apps on like a red, do not use, green, use, maybe yellow, use with caution. So teachers actually aren't making guesswork. They're not going out there into the unknown, but they're being told definitely use these, definitely don't.
Well,
and these are the risks.
List might be a good starter for that. I didn't ask Copilot to red, amber, or green rate it. That's a great idea.
Maria's idea.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, great.
I think. Oh, and we talked about productive skills potentially being a bit more interesting to test, and moving away as well from multiple choice. I think again we need to look at more realistic tasks. I think that's And we also talked about using LinkedIn.
Okay, cool. That's great.
Because it's the new Facebook.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Very good. The other point, it's a very good summary of 5 minutes. We talked also about the support to teachers.
Yes.
Because it's overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
and we have the expert here in that room, people that are more familiar with the AI. So definitely the vast majority of the teachers out there may still
Agreed.
see AI as a glorified Google search functionality. So we need to move away from just this type of usage of AI.
Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. The next group. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, okay. So we were discussing a lot that we are standing at the edge, that AI will definitely change the way we teach and learn languages. And the second slide of your presentation reminded us that we haven't changed the skill for years. We moved from the big tape recorders to tape recorders and then computers, but mainly just to listen. But now with AI, we really need to focus on communication, understanding. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Czech Republic, it means to completely change the curriculum, how the languages are taught, because we are all focusing on grammar, on written knowledge, but this is something AI is able to do very easily. So we are really at the edge because we need to push our officials with AI coming to change the curriculums. We need the way how the teachers teach languages, more communication, more understanding. That means new tools, but completely the new way. So the lesson will look completely differently. I don't if you see it in your countries, but in Czech Republic, part of the language lesson is reading. And students are read sentence by sentence. So they know that still 5 minutes, 3 minutes, now I go. I am lucky. My sentence was very short. But is this really the education for 21st century? Yeah. And it will be really interesting to see around how the languages are learned and taught in your countries. So that was part of our discussion. And Gosha?
I just want to add something. It relates really to the group two about, and it was about giving guidelines to the teachers what apps they should use. And for us, it's really important to distinguish that the teachers know that they use guided AI and not sometimes free of charge, because there is no control whatsoever. So within the smart class, we're using guided AI. So we know that this is safe for the teachers, but most of the time as well, far more by students. So there is a certain control what is going on in the classroom, and the teachers can feel as well that they don't feel threatened in that way as well, that the students might go into wrong paths. And that's very important as well, to rely on the solutions which are brought to the market with the thought of the students and teachers, not only that they were brought up and they can just pull me accidentally to the classroom. That's what we talk about.
That's very important, Gosha. Thank you for bringing that up. It's reminded me of another part of my job in my consultancy, where I help institutions with change management. Peter talked about it earlier. Schools are, I always use the analogy of a large ocean liner. Trying to steer that is a bit like trying to change education. You've got to, you can't do an abrupt turn to either port or starboard, because the ship won't respond. And education systems aren't just about they have a lot of politics involved in them, as well as a more reluctant approach to change. So looking at some of those change management theories that are used in business and industry is quite helpful sometimes. And I do that with school leaders and show them an alternative way to change. But reassurance is one of feeling reassured and comfortable with the change is one of the key elements of a lot of the change management models. So not just having as I think one or two people said yesterday about the government imposing a change doesn't always mean the change happens at the classroom level. And trying to change in one classroom won't bring about the change in the whole school. So it is a complex thing. So
it's bigger than that. It's also the change within a whole district or region or commune.
Absolutely.
And that does require that
Yep.
change management.
But as David said, I think we just cannot ignore this. This is going to take place, and if we do ignore it, I think we're going to get left behind. I think I seem to have been saying this for the last 20, 25 years with technology, but I do believe this is a I think one of the slides said it, a game changer. We've got one more group here. Would you like to, because you've got a slightly different role, because you're a
we are a seller, so mainly we don't have an answer for this question.
But we had a discussion.
Yeah,
Didn't we?
we said that for us, talking about Italy, the main thing that we bring home that we have to start to listen more to the schools and their needs to provide them firstly the hardware and then the software. And for sure, the main part is the courses for the teacher to learn how to use in the proper way, in the best ways for being able to create a lesson for foreign students and to help them to learn a foreign language in the best way possible.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for reminding me, because I did want to end on taking us back to. Sorry, you haven't got your name badge on. What's your name? Emanuele. Reminding us that it's about people. Although we've talked about AI, machine learning, this is about humans. This is about people, and not every person is the same. And it's about the impact that it has. So if you're working with schools that are at this position in their tech adoption, you have to start there. It's no good starting everyone at the same assumption that they're here. And that can be either hardware, software, teaching, or philosophy or beliefs. It can be any of those things. You have to do an audit. In sales, we'd call it a discovery. You'd have to do a discovery discussion about where those schools are. And you have to do the same thing with students, don't you? Good teachers always find where their student is and what works best for them. And my one piece of advice to you is always have in your mind, like I've had in my mind on today, Kulvinder, that one student, and how did I impact on that, and how did that work? And from your perspective, you'll have maybe a school that you've worked with where it's gone really, really well, and hold that dear, hold it close, because that's a success story. So I want to thank you all for your contribution. Thank you all for your friendship and the way in which you've joined with me in this conference. And thank you to Robotel and everyone for organising it. Thank you very much. Thank you.